All right. I get started. Get started.
Hello, my name is Paisley.
We don't know what it is.
Well, I'm new here.
Okay.
Okay.
Alright. Welcome to this month's meeting. March already. A few announcements before we get started. The April swap's coming up next month. It's the second weekend in the month. And if you're coming to the swap, it is from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. If you're going to have a table, we have a 2-hour window beforehand that we can get there. And then there's for setup and then a 1 hour. It's a little bit different than how we've done the 2 we did last year, but we think that'll be a little smoother because that hour is pretty frantic. It's pretty crazy. But that'll give us a little more time. And we are looking for volunteers to help the club. We have the up front with the people coming in, signing in, tickets and stuff. We'll probably do the sticker for the first 100 people again, which the last one we didn't have 100 people, so that worked out. Let's see, but yeah, if you want to volunteer, come talk to one of us, one of the board members, Jason, me, or JT, and one of the cool things about volunteering is you can come at 8 o'clock to help set up and do that. People are going to be set up, and you might get to see some things beforehand, because then you'll be busy once the thing actually gets started. So we also, if some people want to volunteer for afterwards, the tear down and carrying away, that's also great. But we have the front there as people coming in. We also normally have a table for sale dedicated from the club that people will donate to. And then we'll do a silent auction again. Thank you to everyone who participated in the silent auction last time. It definitely helped us with funds for the club so that we could plan for stuff this year. And we're hoping to be able to do that again. So also call out there for things to donate for the silent auction. And then also, if anybody who was there has any tips on some things for the silent auction, I'm trying to think through it to see how we can make it work a little bit better. I tried staggering the time, and people didn't like that. So I'll probably keep stuff hidden back until I put it out for the silent auction, or maybe we just do it in the first couple of hours or something. But yeah, so this week's speaker is Rob Ziegler. And Rob's going to be talking about exotic species. And we also will have a species profile from Corey on inland species. And don't forget about the raffle. If you got a ticket and don't know what the ticket was for, we have this table over here full of donations from members of the club. And when we get done with the meeting, we'll call the numbers on the ticket. You get to go to the table and you get to pick something. And so that's how we share and just build a community. You can go ask the person about the thing that you got from them, learn a little bit about it, things like that. So it's really cool. Am I reading the mission statement? It's up there. The banner contest for February, the winner was Tanner Kesterson. You see his pink flamingo crypts there. We do currently have one going on. We gave it a theme. We're doing themes this year. We're trying out something a little bit different. And this one was exotic species, wasn't it? Like rare. So it's rare exotic species or the most exotic rare species you have. So everybody can be involved. If your most exotic species is a Corey that not everybody has, post that up. But we do the photo contest. It does become the banner on our Facebook page, so it's something kind of fun that everybody gets to participate in. So that covered April, that covered that. Our main meeting, we've got something special that we're currently planning. We're going to be able to go to Conservation Fisheries Incorporated and tour the facility, and there'll be other stuff that we'll let you all know as we sure all that up and work that out. But that's going to be a lot of fun. They do a lot of great work locally. Derek, who's right over there, probably doesn't want me to point out that he's over there, works there, and he's actually been on my live stream talking about the place. It's really interesting. I've got to go there and tour it. I highly recommend making it That will be in place of the meeting, so it won't be here, we'll be meeting there. Also, the April swap, it's not here, don't come here. It is at the Fountain City Lions Club. So all that information is on Facebook, but I'll also include it in this month's, actually this week, it's going out this week, I promise, newsletter. If I have your email address, you should get that. If I don't have your email address, make sure it's on that sheet so that I get it sent to you. There'll be more information. All right, the June meeting, Ben Ochart is coming. Ben is in Nashville, currently lives in Nashville. He specializes in cichlids and he does have a YouTube channel. I've been talking with him for a little bit about coming. He's really excited about coming to the club and maybe even the swap. So check out his channel, and that's going to be a great meeting, and I'll be out of town, so I'm really disappointed that we had to get you. So next merch is the hats, so keep that in mind. We are working on that. I think we might have gotten that ironed out, and so hats are coming soon. Keep that in mind. And also, we're still telling you, if you see these at the stores, make sure you thank the store for having them. And also, it's a great way for you to be able to share the club with people. The QR code, which I've put on the Facebook group, but I'll put it on there again so that you can get it. You can save that to your phone. If you're telling somebody about the group, you can just show them that code. They can get their camera out and tap on it and go to this landing page where they can get information about the club. And all of our links are right there. So everything we're doing is there at their fingertips. Yeah, I got ahead of myself on the swap. $2 admission on the swap, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Oh, that's right there. You're awesome. Oh, that's not us. That's you. All right. So the Bluegrass Fish Keepers Association has their swap the following weekend after us. So it's not very far. How far of a drive is that, John? On the spot. It's less than 4 hours.
I think it's about 3 from here.
Okay.
It's an hour for me and I'm 2 hours.
Okay. All right. Address is there. You've already posted it in the Facebook group, right? Yeah.
Not sure if I did, somebody did.
I think it's there. It's there. And I'll make sure I get it in the newsletter as well for everyone. And if you're interested in having a table at our swap, this is the same one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, both.
It's on there. Yes, it's there. It's right there for me to see. So if you're interested in our swap and that swap, we've combined to do a discounted price of $30 gets you both. So if you're going to do a table and you want to do both. Do you all have an entry cost at that one?
$2.
$2. Awesome. Oh, that was the one I was reading. That's ours too. Why am I up here? All right. There's us. There's our swap. That's all the information I already went over. Anybody have any questions about any of that?
No?
All right.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. All right. So we want to welcome Rob Ziegler. Rob's going to come up and do his presentation on uncommon species. If you need to go backwards, I don't know what that's going to be.
Hello, some of you know me. For those of you who don't, I'm Rob Ziegler. Been keeping fish on and off pretty much my entire life. Lately, my obsession has kind of ramped up, and I've got around 47 aquariums in the house, even my bathroom at this point. I also keep a lot of insects, reptiles, amphibians, birds, cat, dog kind of thing. I was recently featured on Sean Peck's YouTube channel, Peck Tech, if anyone wants to see a mostly full tour of my collection. Today, though, I'm going to be talking about some of the more uncommon or rare aquatic species that I keep. So to start off, we have my favorite fish, the only one I have with the name. It's my West African lungfish. His name's Mud. He's still on the small side. I've had him around 3.5 years now. These guys can get up to 39 inches if they're a female. The males are a little smaller, so I'm really hoping that it's a male. I don't want to have to deal with this little 3-foot fish. But these guys, they're considered a living fossil. They've been unchanged for nearly 400 million years. They're one of 4 African species. West African's the more common one you're going to see. They are from Senegal, Niger, Gambia, West Sudan, Sierra Leone, and Guinea. They can live up to 20 years, and unfortunately, pretty much all of them you're going to find are wild caught. They're not really something that are captive bred. So they can reach up to 10 pounds. They've got a very prominent snout, and eyes are very small and set back. They don't have the best vision. Their body is a little lighter on the dorsal side, and they range from being heavily spotted like this. Some of them are paler and almost no spots at all. Although they do have gills, they also have true lungs, so they have to be able to surface breathe. I think they go around 45 minutes in between breaths, but they can actually drown in the tank if you don't give them enough space to get up there and gulp fresh air. They've got thin limbs in the front and back, you can see there, so they can actually crawl in and out of water if they need to get from one puddle to another. So one of the most interesting things that's allowed them to live unchanged as long as they have is estivation, which is a dormancy period that they can go through. With those limbs, like I was saying, they can crawl from one body of water to another. Generally, they're going to be found in floodplains, so when it starts to dry up in the winter months, they can burrow themselves down into the mud, and usually a couple feet down. And then they're going to create like a mucus sac around them that allows them to stay moist. And they're going to be facing snout up so they can breathe through the hole that they created when they bury themselves. And they can stay down there for 4 to 5 years if they have long drought periods. It's just super cool about them. Unfortunately, a lot of them in the wild are caught as food. You can see videos online where they just go around in like a desert-looking area and they'll find a little hole and dig them up and just rip the sack open. You got a big fish there just sitting there waiting for you, Let's see.
And they eat it.
Can the fish eat it?
So
The people eat it.
The people eat it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty girthy fish, and it's easier than shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, you just grab it. It's almost like a papery sack. They just tear it open and the fish is ready to go.
Huh.
So, like I was saying, these guys do get about 39 inches full grown, so you need absolute minimum of 200 gallons. And that does seem kind of small, but they don't move around very much, so you can keep it on a smaller side for how large of a fish it's going to be. And they do like warmer temperatures, so 76 to 86 degrees is general range. I usually keep mine around. Got a turtle that I keep mine with, as you can see in the picture there. That's my diamondback terrapin. They get along pretty well, but occasionally he likes to nip at the turtle a little bit. But I've never had any injuries or anything like that, fortunately. But they're definitely time to upgrade tank size. He's a 75. So you definitely want a lot of rock and wood cover for them to hide in, since they're kind of just an ambush predator. They just sit and wait for things, and then you like to be out of the way. Usually canister filters are going to be your best bet. They're really messy eaters. A lot of times if you feed them like a worm or something, they'll suck it up, spit it out a bunch of times. So you'll see debris flying everywhere. So you definitely need something with a good biological filtration to keep it clean and healthy for them.
It's one of the grossest things I've ever seen.
Yeah, but it's pretty cool though. It's definitely
And
nice.
you just said it coats itself in, is just in its stomach, and it's just using it and slurping it in and out.
Yeah, it's fun.
very
I meant to bring worms to try and show everybody, but I forgot. They, like I said, they're not a picky eater. In the wild, they'll pretty much eat anything that's living that'll come near them, anything that fits in their mouth, or they'll eat bigger stuff. They're gonna try, I feed mostly a pellet diet. I have those monster pellets, I think is what it's called, the large carnivore. Worms, frozen clams, mussels, stuff like that. Kind of just go to the grocery store and feed them that way. It's a little cheaper than the fish store. Let's see. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is not a fish, but we are an aquatic group. So these are caecilians. They're a type of amphibian. There's 3 main types of amphibians. You generally think of frogs and toads, salamanders, newts, and the third lesser known type is caecilian. They're found all over the world. Most of them are terrestrial, but there's a handful of aquatic species. and this is one of them here. They're native to Cauca and Magdalena drainages of Colombia and northeastern Venezuela. I believe 3 or 4 years ago, they found one in Miami. So they believe they might start, migrating over there. We don't know yet if that's going to be an issue, but I can't imagine it will. They don't go after too much wildlife. In the wild, they presume to have large populations, but because they're small and hide all the time, it's hard to know really to get a good count on them. They live in anywhere from rivers, marshes, lakes, usually in open areas, and rarely found on land. If they are on land, it's going to be real soggy land. Occasionally, I'll find mine coming up on a floating log, and they'll just sit there partially submerged. So I can't imagine that they'll fully come out because they'll dry out fast. When I first got my first batch of them, I left a half-inch gap where my air hose was coming out, and I didn't think anything of it. Well, a few days later, I noticed I couldn't find any of them, and I searched around, and they only made it about a foot or two away from the tank before they dried up. They looked like earthworms on a hot sidewalk, so they definitely need moisture nonstop. They say that they can be abundant around fishing villages where they've been observed to feed on the entrails of fish waste. They're completely legless. They have a worm-like body due to the presence of cutaneous folds known as annuli. So they look just like a worm up close. You can see the folds a little bit there. That is the head. You can barely see the eyes set in. And the eyes are covered in skin, so they can't see very well. They're another ambush predator. And they have a tentacle-like sensory gland that they use to smell and feel movement, I guess, to know when a prey item is coming near them. They are seasonal breeders. Breeding occurs during the wet season. They are sexually mature at 4 years of age. I actually was lucky enough to have babies this past year. I had no idea how old they were when I got them. And one day I started to notice that one of them was looking a little lumpy, and I didn't know if that was just something they were doing or if they were pregnant. I had zero idea. And then a few weeks later, I was just sitting there watching TV, and all of a sudden I noticed some little like earthworm-sized critters swimming around in the tank. And turns out I think my first batch had like 7 babies pop up. So I was really excited. These guys aren't cheap, so it was nice to get a few $100 worth of stillions going there. Then they can have up to 11. And a few weeks later, I had a second one drop some. So I think I ended up with like 12 or 13. It was hard to get a full count because these guys spend the majority of their time buried in the sand. You rarely get to see them all at once. If you feed them, you get the majority to come out, but never all of them. The weird thing is their gestation period is up to 43 weeks long. It can vary. So for the development of them, the babies can increase their length up to 6 times by the time that their yolk is fully absorbed. And once the yolk is depleted, the embryos emerge from the egg and uncurl and align themselves lengthwise in the oviduct. They're sustained by a lipid-rich secretion from the walls of the oviduct. They have a special teeth that they use to scrape the walls, and it creates a secretion that they feed off of them. So they're almost eating the mother alive, basically. I've heard there's some species that the way they give birth is by chewing your way out. Luckily, this isn't one of them, but that's kind of neat. And they are born with gills that only last for up to a few hours. I didn't get lucky enough to see the gills, but if you look in the photo, the left end is the head, and there's a white line right behind the head there, and that's actually the leftover tissue from where the gills were. And that'll disappear after like a week or two, and it's gone. And it's believed that the gills they help absorb some of the nutrients for them to feed on while they're inside the mother. When they're born, they're an exact copy of the parent. They're probably 5-6 inches in length, like this, just like an earthworm. So for housing, They don't appear to be territorial, so you can keep large groups of them together. I started in a 20 gallon with about 5 adults that range from 10 to 20 inches in length, so you can kind of pack them in there. They actually seem to like being in a group. When you feed them, they kind of ball up, you can all swarm together. It's neat. Sand is going to be your best bet for substrate because they like to bury themselves. You could try rocks, but with amphibians, you got to worry about impaction. That's where when they feed, they kind of just take big gulps so they can suck in some of the substrate and then get impact in their system, they die. That's always a worry with an amphibian, but you want to keep something as natural as you can. So, next to having mud, like where their natural environment is, sand's going to be the way to go, really. I don't know if anybody's been to that new reptile center that they have at the Knoxville Zoo. They have some Sicilians there, and they keep them on a rock bottom, which I don't think is the best way to go. But I think they do that just so that they're out more and not hiding all the time. You want to have plenty of wood and PVC pipes or terracotta pots for them to hide in, since they're a prey species. Anything that can eat them is going to eat them, really, so they need to hide. And they do like to spend time floating on the wood there. At first, I just threw wood in there just to let it sink. I thought I'd give it a while to submerge, but I started finding the babies up top, so I added some more wood, and they seemed to really like it. And I threw in this picture, the guppy grass is kind of depleted there, but I like to throw large clumps in there every so often. Gives the babies a place to go and swarm into. They kind of just like hang from the stems of it. It's kind of cool to watch them do that. But you can have regular plants in there, but since they burrow so much, good luck keeping it down. They're gonna pull out pretty much anything. So I just have a little nubius that's on a piece of wood. I can't do anything to that. Just like fish, do regular water changes. 30% is what I do. You want to make sure to leave a good air gap up there because they are escape artists. It just lessens the chance of them getting out. And you see little pieces of tape around the edge there. I made a custom lid with just barely gaps to get my air hoses and electrical cords through. I have the lid taped down, and then every part that sticks out through, I have those taped down as well because they will fit through the smallest of gaps. So like a cockroach, they'll get through any little hole they can, and you'll lose them. They like warmer side waters, 75 to 82 degrees. That's a picture of one of the babies just chilling on wood there. For a heater, you want to make sure to have something with a heater guard on it. We got one that's fully encased in plastic because they like to wrap around stuff, and if they do that with solid skin being an amphibian, they're gonna burn themselves likely. Sponge filter is the way to go. It's the safest bet. Mainly because any other kind of filter, they're gonna find their way going, into the intake and output. So if you do go with a canister filter, make sure to put sponges on it and zip tie that on there. You don't want any chance because they'll make it into your filter. And like I was saying, zero gaps in there in the lid to keep them down. They're definitely one of the cooler things I've started keeping in the last couple of years. Most people never heard of them. I had a hard time tracking them down to find a place to buy them. I found one place online, that was it. As far as diet, they have a sensory gland for locating food. They should be fed 2 to 3 times a week as adults, and juveniles at least 4 times to give a little extra food to help them grow. They are a carnivore-based diet, so in the wild they're going to go after pretty much any living thing that they can catch. Insects, crustaceans, mussels, dead fish. I feed mine earthworms. I keep like 30 some odd varieties of the terrestrial ones as well. That's what fueled my search to find some of these aquatic ones. The terrestrial ones are much more colorful. There's some really cool ones out there. They can be found pretty much any body of water that's high in vegetation. They're detrivores. They're going to eat any kind of decaying organic matter, leaves, wood, dead fish, and just anything organic they're going to go after that's decaying. If you put them in a planted aquarium that you keep nice, you keep it clean, and everything all trimmed. You're not gonna have much luck with these guys because they're only gonna eat the plants that are really dying back. They'll occasionally feed on a live plant, but you just won't have much luck with a high reproduction rate. They do prefer lots of cover because, you know, they're prey to anything that can fit in their mouth. Most fish will go after them. I keep mine in a 20 long that I have some African clawed frogs in. And that tank, I just have a bunch of wood, and it breaks down a lot with the kind of wood I have, so they can just take it off in there. At one point, I probably had a couple thousand just crawling all over the place. But like I was saying, my nicer tanks, I rarely see one. You know, there's probably only a few in there. They're nature's cleanup crew, though. The way that they eat everything that's decaying, they just break it down. And terrestrial versions, they essentially create soil by breaking all the materials down. Eggs are laid into a pouch on the underside. I forget the name of it, but it's the same name of what a kangaroo has. So they develop in there for multiple molting cycles, and then when they are released, they are identical to the adult version. Just the color varies occasionally until the full form comes out. Next up, we got another amphibian. This one can be found on land, but generally only in periods of dormancy. These are pretty much fully aquatic as well. It's a Budget's frog. They also call them hippo frog, Freddy Krueger frog. They're found in Bolivia, Paraguay, and Argentina. They're native to Gran Chaco, which is a large flat region of dry scrubland forest in South America that undergoes seasonal flooding in dry months. So when they go through the dormancy period, it's a lot like the lungfish. They can live up to 20 years as well, and they only recently, in the early 2000s, started to captive breed them. They were mostly wild caught in the beginning, so not a lot of people had them, and still pretty hard to come by. One of the reasons they're called the hippo frog, the way the eyes sit on top there, and their mouth is a third the size of the body, so they can eat a lot of stuff. They'll try. They have a large teeth-like ridges and 2 fangs in there as well, so when they do grab onto something, they're going to hold on. You don't want to get bit by one. They generally won't mess with you, but if they do grab you, they can hold on. Their adults are usually greenish-brown color, sometimes grayish-pink, with a white or yellow belly and eyes. Most all of them have a yellow stripe across the lips, and they have a smooth, bump-free skin. Males are quickly identified in the mating season by a smaller, dark throat patch underneath. The females also are generally going to be larger, like a lot of amphibian species. The young frogs are typically 1.5 inches in length by the time they're done with metamorphosis. And I should have put a picture of the tadpoles because they're just crazy looking. They have the giant mouth as well. They're not the little circle with the tail like you're going to see in the majority of tadpoles. These guys are some crazy tadpoles. When they go to their adult size, they're 4 to 5 inches, just a big ball of frog. They weigh up to 1/2 pound when they're fully grown. So they're going to be, they're going to fill up your hands when you put them when you hold it. As far as the hippo name as well, they sit with their eyes and nostrils out of the water. So when you see a lot of pictures of hippos just hanging out in rivers there, they look just like this frog. It's really cool. And they are ambush predators as well. They're too chunky to really go after stuff too well. So they just sit and wait for their prey to come. That's why they have such a big mouth as well. It helps them catch whatever comes close. They're unique for being a carnivorous tadpole as well. Like I was saying, the tadpoles have a large mouth. Most tadpoles are going to graze on a lot of aquatic plants and stuff like that. The tadpoles eat anything from other frog tadpoles to insects, anything that's going to fit their mouth. They have to grow into small frogs at a fast rate because they are in the floodplain, so they have to go through metamorphosis in time to be an adult and travel to another body of water or begin the dormancy period that they go through. So during winter, which is their dry season, they go through their dormancy, so they will also bury themselves down into the soil and create a mucus cocoon similar to the way the lungfish does it. And one of the coolest things, it's kind of cruel if you try and do it yourself, but there's videos out there where if you corner them or try and scare them and they're on land, they puff up like the photo here and stand on all fours and they scream. It's like a real high-pitched, robotic kind of scream. It's odd. But you're only going to see that if you do it to them, because mine I've never seen on land before. So, you know, you just got to do something cool to make it happen, unfortunately. They're going to require, as an adult, at least a 30-gallon minimum. I've got mine in a 40 a breeder that I built here. It's a custom pelletarium I made out of foam and silicone and all that. It's taken a solid year to let the plants fill in on the background there. They do require both land and water, even though I've never seen them on land. Generally, that's, you know, just if they want to come out, they can. You could also try a floating platform. I originally designed this. The land's in the back right corner there. It's about an 8-inch wide section. I built that thinking that I would trigger them to go into dormancy in this enclosure, but then I decided I wanted to add fish to it, and that, you know, they're going to need the heat and everything all year, and I didn't want to drop the water with them. I've got a small school of Hesperostis cories. There's a little one hiding under the right side of the wood there. I think I have 10 or 11, and some shrimp. And the frog will eat them, you know, if you can, but I don't think he's ever gotten any. They do need warmer sides, so at least 80 to 82 degrees, and without a lid, I'm having to top this thing off all the time. It just evaporates so fast with that warmer temperature and the shallow water. They do need a heavy filtration because they're messy eaters, just like the lungfish is. They, you know, they just chow down and stuff goes everywhere with them. I feed them bugs. You'll find I feed them dubia roaches, so you'll find little like cockroach wings or legs floating around. So you need to get a good filter to break that down. They'll eat crickets, earthworms, mealworms. I mainly do dubias just because I breed them and they're one of the most nutritious feeder bugs that you can get. And they're crazy breeders once you get them going. And crickets are gross. I'm sure some of you have reptiles. They stink, they're loud, they get out. You know, it's just, yeah, they die in a week. You can breed them, but it's kind of tricky. You know, it's so stinky. So dubia roast is the best way to go. And I'll coat them in like a vitamin calcium powder to keep the frog healthy. I did have another one originally that was larger than the one I have right now, but I later found out that he was never going underwater. He was just floating at the top. Turns out he had some kind of bone issue when I first got him, so he passed a few months ago. So right now I have one that's probably 6 months old. I think I got him right after he lost the tail. They go through the up to 3 month dormancy period, and you need to do that after. You can do it their first year, but generally the next winter after their first year is when you're going to start that, and you can trigger it by slowly dropping the water level and dropping the temperature as well to mimic the dry season that they would go through. And when you get down to almost no water, you have a land area for them to go to, and then they'll bury themselves and create the cocoon that will allow them to do a dormancy. And to keep them in that state, the best thing to do is stick them in the refrigerator and do that for like 2 to 3 months. So here's a little step-by-step on how to build a pelletarium like this. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Serpa Designs on YouTube. He makes like the coolest any kind of enclosure from fish to reptiles, amphibians. So I learned a lot from him. You should check him out. But the best stuff to use is great stuff foam. It's the plumbing foam. You know, it expands. Like gets up to an inch with the standard kind. Some of them go more, but unfortunately I didn't take enough photos from each step. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to just spray the foam anywhere to create the background, the base of it and all that. And it will go crazy, so don't worry on that point. Because once it dries, you're going to start carving it away into the shape that you want. But if you want any base material like the large rocks I have there, you want to make sure to put those in while it's still wet. After you get the general shape carved out, you can add little accent pieces of wood. I use a lot of small pieces of manzanita wood to look like almost like roots coming out of the side of the wall. So I wanted to mimic just a muddy kind of lake area, pond area. As far as attaching the substrate to the background, you want to use G silicone 1 or anything that's 100% silicone, no additives. You know, just like you'd seal your tank with the G's, the cheaper way to go instead of the Aquarium branded stuff. So they come in black. That's going to be your best bet, really, if you want to blend it in better. So you put it in section by section, and then with the silicone, kind of brush it on, and then push your substrate onto it to get it stuck in place. Once you get the bottom layer, I use sand on the bottom layer there. I then did the top with a mixture of coconut fiber and I can't remember what else I put in there. But got everything pressed in place. And once it's all dry, you want to use a razor blade to scrape the glass, make sure everything's nice and clean looking. Water, you add water next to make sure there's no leaks. I had a land area, so I wanted to make sure there wasn't any leaking into that. I think I did have leaking, so I go back and silicone it a little bit. And then once everything's all set, you add your substrate, plants, and then get that cycle going. It takes a while for the plants to fill in. You don't really want to add the animal right away. You want to let the plants get situated and everything. I used the sand in this one, threw some leaves in there. And you saw that the earlier picture that showed how much it's filled in since this point. And it looks pretty bare on the right, but by adding the coconut core, it really allows a good surface for the vining plants to be able to grab onto. And seeing how well it's held up for the year that I've had this going, I think I'm going to start creating aquarium backgrounds in the same way. So there's a lot you can do with it, because those 3D backgrounds are just crazy expensive. So this section is going to be on some native species that I keep, native to the US. This is my 40-gallon Riverman whole tank. In this tank, I have rainbow shiners. They're found in southeastern US, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee. This is one of my favorite fish. They're just so bright. They get 3 inches in length. They're shoaling fish. The males, when they are coming into the breeding season, you can get these beautiful fluorescent colors here. Derek sent me this map that shows the different colors that come out of the different regions that you can find these in. Anything from red, blue, some purples mixed in there. This one is in the aquarium trade. Sometimes you see them at the stores, but I've been told that it's kind of like a crossbreed of a few of them, so it's more on the reddish side with a little bit of blue. Then they are micro predators. They'll pretty much eat anything that's living that they can fit in their mouth and catch. So, any kind of Daphnia, little worms, insects, anything they can catch. I feed them pretty much everything: flakes, pellets, frozen food, live foods. I do a lot of Daphnia, baby vine shrimp. They love it. Go crazy for it. The tank also has the southern red belly dace. That's a male here fired up for breeding season. They're found from the upper Mississippi Basin and Great Lake drainages, from Minnesota and Pennsylvania, all the way south to Arkansas and Alabama. They like cool streams and pools that are 1 to 3 feet deep. They're 2 to 3 inches in length. They're another shoaling fish there. And nature, these are going to feed on plant material, algae, and invertebrates. Once again, these feed on everything that I grow. They just go crazy. They all swarm together. I also have some fiery black shiners that Derek bred. This is one male that's fired up. You get the nice white, bright tips on the fins there, and red nose. They're really pretty. They occur in North and South Carolina. They inhabit rocky, fast-moving waters and pools and creeks, and small to medium-sized rivers. They get up to 4 inches. They're one of the bigger shiners that I have. In nature, they're going to feed on aquatic insects and possibly small fish, and they'll eat pretty much anything you throw at them as well. And then this tank I designed around this fish here. This is a central stone roller. The really neat thing about these guys is when they go into breeding season, they'll pick up and move stones into a large pile. And once they're satisfied with them, these piles can be huge. They're a few feet across almost on some of them. And all the other shiners and fish that are in that area, they tend to use it as a spawning ground too. So if you look on Derek's page there, was it Enchanted?
Enchanting ectotherms.
Yes, check that out. He's got some really cool pictures of spawning of all these rock piles. So I designed my tank to give them a large area to hopefully create a rock pile there. They have a wide occurrence. They're in the Great Lakes to Wisconsin and Minnesota, south through Mississippi Valley, New Mexico. They prefer habitat of pools or riffles or gravel, rubble substrate, and small or medium-sized streams with cool to moderate fast currents. They can be anywhere from 4 to 11 inches in length. Mine are 40 gallons, so I hope they don't get too big for it, but we'll see what happens. They're herbivores. They feed on algae and bottom leaves scraped from the rocks. In an aquarium, I feed on algae wafers and spirulina flakes, but they tend to go after most anything I throw in there as well. And I also have rainbow darters. Darters have become one of my favorite fish as well. They like to lay on the bottom or on a plant or on rocks, and they just kind of they look like a little tripod sitting there. And they're really personal. They'll come up to you in the tank and just stare at you and ready to be fed like a little dog begging. They're cool. So the rainbow darter is one of the kinds that I started with, and they're going to range from Minnesota to Louisiana. They're common in gravel, rocky, or sandy substrates and fast, shallow riffles of cool streams and rivers. They get 3 to 4 inches in length. Nature, they feed on insects, snails, fish eggs, crayfish, so pretty much anything they can catch that's alive. In the aquarium, they're super picky in my experience. I can only feed them live foods or frozen foods, but since I have all the shiners and other swarming fish, you have to spot feed these guys. So I have like a 2-foot pair of tweezers that I use to feed each individual darter that I keep to make sure that they're actually eating. So they're a little bit of work, but they're well worth it. So this is another one of my river tanks that I have going. And I recently set this one up a couple months ago. I was lucky enough to get a 33 long from Corey. These tanks are hard to come by. I've only found 2 of them. I wanted to mimic a kind of like a Tennessee stream here, so I used local rocks and sand and gravel in it. The only fish I have in this currently is the Tennessee shiner. But they're located in Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, Alabama, Kentucky, and Virginia. And they like rocky pools and runs of creeks to medium rivers. They get up to 4 inches in length. In the wild, they pretty much feed on any kind of living critter they can hand. And in the aquarium, they're like most of my other shiners. They'll eat anything I throw at them. Flakes, pellets, frozen food. And even though they all do get like 4 inches, they love baby brine shrimp. They go crazy for it. And this is the first river manifold tank that I created. This one I kind of designed to be like a Chinese stream, so I've got hill stream loaches in here. I think I've got 7 of them, the reticulated kind, and also have a school of white cloud mountain minnows and some rainbow darters and fantail darters. There's a fantail darter. They're kind of a little dull in color, but just as personal as the rest of them. They get a little larger than some of the other darter species I keep. They're going to occur in shallow riffles with a swift current, and gravel, and cobble substrate. They get up to 4 inches. In the wild, they feed on midge, black fly, caddisfly, mayfly, nymphs, isopods, amphipods. I did throw isopods in there, and they're all gone, so I'll probably chow down on them. And in the aquarium, like the rainbow darter, I have to spot feed these guys as well. This is just live foods, mainly black worms when you can get them. That's a hard thing right now. So they get a lot of frozen foods. And this is my native 20-gallon tank. This one I do have a heater in. This is good. I keep the blue-spotted sunfish in there. They like a little warmer water. They can be found from New York to Alabama. They prefer slower moving water with dense vegetation. And unlike most of the sunfish that we see, these guys are fairly small. They get 3 to 4 inches. These beautiful blue fluorescent spots on them. I've seen them much more color than this picture here. They're going to mainly feed on aquatic invertebrates. And in the aquarium, they are picky as well. So I've only been able to feed them frozen foods and live foods. I was told by Curtis that he's trained one of them that he did give me, that you can train him onto like a pellet, but I've had no luck with that so far. Hopefully I can. And I also keep brindled mad tom in there. Mad toms are just like a smaller catfish variety. These guys can get up to 4 inches in length. They range from the Great Lakes drainages to New York, southwest to Kansas and Oklahoma. They prefer streams and rivers as well with moderate flow. And they're going to mainly eat aquatic insects. In an aquarium, they'll chat out on anything. He always hangs out underneath my sponge filter, so I just feed pellets, and mostly pellets and some frozen food to him. He just slurps it up. They'll also go after small fish they can fit in their mouth. It's catfish, you know, they'll take anything they can get. He's pretty cool to watch. I'm hoping he doesn't go after some of my sunfish, but we'll see. So these guys are in a different tank. I took a picture of it. This is the leaf starter. They are pretty plain looking, but they are only like 1.5 inches in length, so they'll just sit on any kind of plant leaf. It's really cool to watch them. So you'll see them at a lot more levels of the tank than you do the other kinds of darters. They have a pretty large range across the country there. And they prefer crystal clear lakes and rivers with dense vegetation because they're so small and they need to hide from predators. Their diet consists of microcrustaceans, aquatic invertebrate larvae, copepods, water fleas. In the aquarium, I'm feeding them live foods only. I've tried frozen food and I can occasionally get them to munch on some, but it mostly just goes to waste. So I give them a lot of Daphnia and baby brine shrimp. That's about it. A lot of these native species, you know, a lot of them some are captive bred, but a lot of them are wild caught, so it's hard to train them on anything other than just live foods. And my other favorite fish that Derek got me hooked onto, he's the pygmy sunfish. This is a male here, and going into the breeding colors, but this is maybe halfway fired up. I couldn't get a better shot. These guys are so hard to shoot because they're usually about 1 inch long, and they hide almost all the time, so it's hard to get a shot where they're not halfway covered up by a plant. These are found in different locations throughout the southeast U.S., west up to Texas and up to Illinois, but that's mainly, I think the zone 8 is found in the broader range. A lot of these are only found here in the southeast in a few different states. I keep 4 different kinds currently. I think, how many kinds are there? Because there's like 7 or 8?
7 or 8 species.
Yeah, and when we go to the conservation fisheries, they have one of the endangered types there. It's pretty cool.
Not quite as pretty, but.
No, not as pretty, but it's still cool. They prefer swamps, marshes, just shallow, slow-moving bodies of water, heavy vegetation. A lot of times you just find them in ditches on the side of the road. And an aquarium, they're really picky as well, so it's mainly just live foods, Daphnia, brine shrimp, black arms, you can get them. I got them to eat live or frozen food, but once again, not much luck with it. I'm trying to breed them, but it's I keep them all in the same tank together, and they'll generally eat all the babies. So if you want to have good luck breeding them, you kind of have to separate them off because the fry are like the size of larvae. They're almost invisible. They're so tiny, it's wild. But I have successfully bred a few of the every lady. So I've been talking about the river manifold, and what that is, it's a system that helps produce a one-directional current in an aquarium mimicking a creek or a river. It's something I wanted to try for a long time, and I've got hooked on making these. I've got 3 now. The way they're going to work, it uses a network of PVC pipes and power heads and sponge filters. The power head is going to suck the water through the pipe, through the sponge filter on the opposite end. So what you're going to get is just that circular flow through the pipe and out to the end. Now these aren't perfect. I've read that they work pretty well. There's not a lot of info on these out there. That you do get a little bit of backflow. It's not a perfect one-directional thing. If you want to do that, perfect one-directional, it takes a lot more work with like a dead space underneath to drop off. It's tricky. I don't have the time or space or money to be able to make what it takes to make a true one-directional flow, but this is as close as you can get. The sponges are going to act as biological and mechanical filtration, and once you get this built, you can just bury it in the substrate, so all you see is just the sponges and the power head sticking out the ends. So to build one of these, I've got a list of everything you need here. Most setups for the average size tanks, you're gonna use 3/4 inch PVC. Use a couple power heads. And there's different kinds of power heads. I don't know what you call it, but you want to look for a power head that looks like that, with the bottom piece there instead of being more of a fan. So I have here the laid out PVC all put together. You can glue it together, but I don't bother. When it's a buried substrate, you're not going to get much leaking there. And it's kind of hard to get it perfectly aligned if you're going to glue it all together, so it's easier not to glue it to get it to sit perfectly flat. So when I get it started, I get the PVC all going, and then I glue with hot glue. I glue the power head onto there to get a nice seal onto a coupler. You add your base layer of substrate, and I have sand here, and you want to make sure to plug up any of the PVC that you don't have anything on, so you don't get sand down into your system. And you lay your base rock. And then the next step, you're gonna fill it in, and depending on how much level you have there, it's good to put some filler, like smaller rock behind the large rocks to fill the sand in. It kind of helps hold it in place a little bit. Next, you can blend it in with some different grades of stone to get more of a natural look. You want to take a piece of PVC, drill a bunch of holes in it to stick through the sponge filter to allow it to suck through. And then you test fill it, make sure everything's good. I added some driftwood, and I usually use zip ties attached to large rocks to hold that down. There's prettier ways, but the zip tie you can eventually cut off if, once it's fully submerged. And then add plants and get your cycle going. I am very impatient, so I don't like to do the regular cycle process. There's a product called Fritz Turbo Start 700 that you can get at Aquatic Marine. You pour that in there and you can start adding fish the same day. You want to lightly start with fish. You don't want to fully stock it right away, but it's worked miracles. I've used it on shrimp tanks and everything, and the shrimp, I gave it a few days and it works great. I don't think I've had anything die off while using that Fritz. So if you don't want to wait, try that out. It's better than those off-the-shelf bacteria that you get, because those are like the dormant one. But the Turbo Start 700 is a live bacteria that you keep in the refrigerator. It doesn't last as long, but it works wonders. And this is a little, clip of one of my river manifolds. I just fed it some frozen food, so it's kind of chaos in there right now. But you can see there's mostly one directional current and a little bit of backspin with the plants, but it's as close as I can get it to the one directional and mimic the river. So that's everything. I appreciate your time, guys.
Hello, I'm Corey. I want to talk a little bit about English live bears. They're like the guppy's smaller cousin. It's kind of been a controversial thing since they've been discovered, whether or not they are a common guppy or aren't. They were originally described in literature in the 1930s by somebody, I don't know who. And then they were rediscovered in the 1970s by John Endler, the man that they're named after. And he actually introduced them to the hobby, but he himself, didn't know if they were guppies or their own species or whatever. And then in 2005, they were formally recognized as their own species separate from the guppy. They're smaller than a common guppy by quite a bit. If you've got a pure variety, males top out at around 3/4 of an inch typically. Sometimes they'll get closer to an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter. Females, definitely larger, but they still never get to the size of a common guppy. An inch and 3/4 is a very large Endler female. Some other notable differences between the Endlers and your common guppy. They actually have a mating ritual. That's one of the most interesting things, I think. It's a consensual process where the female picks a male based on their displays, whereas with guppies, lots of times you got all the males in a tank chasing the one largest female. You don't see that as much in a tank full of Endlers. They're native to two lakes in Venezuela, Lake Campona and Lake Cumana, and then they're found in some streams in the same region of Venezuela. Though that area specifically has been subject to a lot of pollution over the last 100 years or so. And in the wild, it's another sort of controversial topic, but the general consensus is that there probably aren't pure Endler's live bears left in the wild anymore because of a combination of common guppies being released to their native ranges and pollution in the water that actually makes it difficult for them to identify their own species. Supposedly in the wild, I believe John Tyler is who introduced me to this concept, different species of Poesia, which are like your guppies, your Endlers, mollies and stuff, they have markers in their urine that allow them to identify one another, but as the water becomes more polluted, they're not able to use those hormonal markers to identify their own species as clearly, so you get more hybridization. And that hybridization in the wild has diluted the genetics of Endler's live bears, where collection specimens collected now, they're not a pure Endler anymore. Pure Endlers were, the general consensus is they were isolated from the common guppy around 200,000 years ago, just by some geographic event that separated them from the main population that makes up the rest of the common guppies. And they were, as a result of that, they speciated, which resulted in these little differences. If you ask me, I think they're probably one of the best fish to start with in the aquarium hobby. Nano fish are really popular, and you don't get a whole lot more nano than Endlers. They're incredibly hardy. You don't get a whole lot easier than Endlers as far as their water parameters. They do great in a wide range of water parameters. Typically, you want a little higher pH. Something from 7 to 8 will be fine, but even higher than that in their natural environment, they'll have a lot of salinity in the water. Not quite a brackish environment, but they definitely come from harder water and tend to do well in harder water. But that's not to say that they won't survive and thrive in softer water as well. Like I say, they're pretty hardy. Yeah, so anybody got any questions on them? I think I've about spewed out all I can spew.
Do they reproduce a lot like guppies do?
Almost exactly. Really, the only real difference there is the little mating ritual they have that precedes reproduction. If you get a tank of Endlers and you have a good mix of males and females in there, you'll see the males do their little displays off to the side. Not to say you wouldn't see a guppy flash similarly, but what you won't see is all the males just harassing one female. They've got a lot more consensual breeding process, which is about the only significant difference as far as the reproduction goes. The females are smaller, so they don't typically have as many fry as you'd get from a large female guppy, but that's really just relative to size.
I think Curtis said you had like 13 different species of Endlers? 11 or something like that? Quite a bit.
Well, they're all the same species, but like I've got 14 different varieties of Endlers that I keep. There's actually somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 different varieties that are all wild phenotypes that have just been line bred from a couple of wild specimens that had the same coloration or whatever. They've not been developed domestically anything like the common guppy has. Whereas you have all these different colors that come up in fancy guppies. All the colors you see here, that's more or less what they look like in the wild. I'm not saying that they haven't been line bred, but they've not really developed much as far as additional traits. They've just isolated what's there in the wild. Whereas, well, everybody knows guppies, you've got all kinds of crazy colors and different fin varieties and stuff that have just come from constant just isolating new traits and stuff, and that's just not going on as much with endlers.
Is there any good sources for, like, if you're trying to pick and choose, like, specific endlers that you like, based off, like, what you see pictures and types?
You just kind of gotta go online and find what you like. There's the most common variety for a long time was called the black bar endler, and that was what was introduced to the hobby in the 1970s by John Endler himself. I actually have that line of endlers at my house in my collection of endlers, which it's the same fish that he brought to the States in like 1977 or something that have been kept and maintained the entire time. There's a few different dealers online who just specialize in endlers. As far as they're not officially considered endangered, they're not on any lists or anything like that, but the general consensus is that the native populations of endler aren't what they once were either. They're considered by some to be extinct in the wild just as a matter of genetic dilution. They've all been hybridized with the common guppy. There have been a handful of hobbyists that have set out to collect and preserve as many varieties as they can. And it's literally like one or two guys. There's a guy named Adrian Hernandez in Florida, and Philip Loizen, I think is how you pronounce his name. Those two guys are basically responsible for the 100 or so different varieties that are in the hobby now. And all of those have been collected from the two lakes in Venezuela I mentioned before, which were the Cumana and Campana lakes. Now, you can go on like eBay and Aquabid and find a pretty good variety, and as long as the person selling them has an idea of where their endlers came from, has some idea about the history. Hybridization is a really common thing in the hobby. It's hard to find purebred endlers at like, say, Aquamarine or insert local fish store here. It's rare that you'll walk in and find a pure variety unless they just happen to have a local hobbyist who's kind of passionate about keeping a pure variety and they've sold them to the store. So, I think I've answered around that question as much as I can. You can get them online. There's literally like probably 120 different varieties to choose from. And you just kind of got to find what you want.
LR Verts has a lot of endlers.
I'm not familiar with them. Some
He's
places
on
I am
YouTube.
familiar with, there's a website called Endler Arc. If you just want to go spend an outrageous amount of money on endlers, you can spend like $300 on a trio if you want to go a route like that. But guys like the guy who runs Endler Arc, he's got a big long spiel on his website where it's more or less, he's devoted all of his time and energy to preserving the individual varieties. He's not someone who is responsible for collecting them and getting them out into the hobby, but he is definitely trying to build recognition for them in the hobby, get more people interested. So that's one place you can go. Like I say, I've actually, when I got into endlers, I actually bought out another hobbyist who was getting out of the hobby. She had a collection of like 10 different varieties. And since then, I haven't purchased anymore, but I've just found vendors online who had good fish that were appeared genuine endlers to me. I just reached out to them and said, hey, I got these endlers. Would you like to trade them for some that you don't have? Or some that I don't have that you do have? And I've been building my collection that way without buying any after the initial purchase. Where they're rare fish, if you can find people in the community, in the fish keeping community that are also interested in, that's a good way to build a collection. And if you got collectoritis, you just like getting into something, endlers are a great place to start. They're little fish, easy to breed. You can it's just another 10-gallon tank and you can have another variety. You can go smaller than that too, really. They're an excellent nano fish. I've got several 5s that have colonies and endlers in them. I've got a 5-gallon tank that's probably got close to 100 my 1977 black bars. They're especially small. relative to all the other varieties. I keep my male stop out at around a ½ inch. You might would say that that's because they're in a overpopulated tank, but it's not always been that populated, and they've always been that size. I actually think it comes down to those were collected before the guppy genetics ever made it into the wild population. And actually, you can look at a timeline of collections of endlers, endlers that have been collected at different periods of time, starting like the 1970s on, and they do progressively get larger and more colorful. And I think that's just clearly more common guppy genetics making it into the gene pool, just from people releasing them where they shouldn't be released.
Are they just as apt to eat their fry?
No, they're actually far less apt. That's an excellent question. They're far less apt to eat their fry. The size in general, and maybe just a little bit of difference in their personality, generally speaking, when compared to regular guppies, they're far less apt to eat their fry. Only your biggest females will you ever see predating on the fry, and I almost never see any of that anyway. They do really well in community tanks where maybe you wouldn't want to keep a common guppy because they might want to eat something else tiny in the tank. Like I've got a colony of snowball shrimp with my colony of blonde blue star endlers, and I've never seen any of the endlers harassing any shrimplets or anything like that. So that is actually a really big benefit as far as the endlers go. And they're a great accessory fish. I don't know if I have a tank that doesn't have any endlers in it, honestly. All of my betas, I keep endlers with them, and my experience with that, normally, if you add a group of 10 endlers to like a 3-gallon beta tank or something, you might have a couple days. For the first couple days, you'll lose an endler here or there, but after that, they kind of leave them alone, and they normally, even if they don't leave them alone, the endlers reproduce quickly enough where you always have a population of endlers in the tank. And also, just on another note, adding the other fish to a lot of those fish you normally keep solitarily, like betas, it'll bring a lot of behavior out that you wouldn't get to see normally without having a fish like endlers in there.
Well, the betas mess with the fry.
Oh, yeah, the betas will, it just comes down to your beta. Like I say, it's been my experience that after I add them, normally after the first couple of days, they leave them alone for the most part. And I'd say that they just eat some fry here and there as they produce fry. But no, the betas will eat if you've got a mean beta, he'll kill everything you put in there. It really just comes down to the temperament of your individual fish, I would say. But I've had good experience doing it.
And what's the minimum like school size for those?
Oh, a pair. If you just wanted to get started there, with a pair in 28 days, you'll have some more, 4 or 5 more likely, and then in another 28 days, those will be adults and they'll be getting pregnant. And in a few months, you'll go from having 2 or 3 to having 10 or 20. It doesn't take long at all. That's something else worth noting, because they've not been line bred or inbred so much. A lot of the stuff you get with guppies, like crooked spines, there's far less colon involved with endlers just because their genetics haven't been they've not been as inbred over time and stuff like guppies have.
Is there a male-female ratio?
I try to keep it at 2 females to every male. You can definitely go way less than that. It's what you can have 1 male to 10 females potentially, but because of the little mating ritual I've mentioned a couple times already, they won't keep all the females as bred as say a guppy would with a similar ratio, in my opinion. So most of my colonies, I just try and keep the males thinned out. You don't really want a 1-to-1 ratio, because then you've always got a male for every female and no females ever getting a break. They are always going to be flashing on and trying to get the ladies' attention anyway. So just as long as you have a couple females for every male, you should be good. You won't run into, like I've said before, sometimes in a guppy tank, say you might have 10 males and 30 females, but then all 10 males are chasing the one big guppy around, just not giving her a break. You won't have that sort of thing with inverts at all. Okey doke. I don't think there's anything else to say.
Alright. Were you gonna talk about the collection event? Did I miss that at the beginning?
I didn't see it. I can if you all want, or
Yeah, to give people time to plan for it.
Also, I brought some Silverado anglers. They're my favorite variety. They're over here on the giveaway table, a male and a few females. And Curtis, who couldn't make it today, he has a colony of LT rays that we give them away in the future that didn't get to make it here today.
Yeah, if you wanna talk about that, it hit me. I was like, wait, weren't we supposed to bring that up?
Okay.
This is John.
John Tyler. In addition to this club, another club that I'm active in is the Bluegrass Club up in Lexington, Kentucky. Every year, we take a trip and go somewhere in the state of Kentucky and do some native collecting. This year, we're going to be just about 50 miles north of the Tennessee line, right off of I-75. So I reached out to the guys here in the Knoxville Club and said, hey, if any of y'all want to come up on that day, I know there's some legalities and conditions about collecting in Tennessee, but you know, Kentucky, y'all come up. We're going to do it on the 3rd of June, which is the first Saturday in June. So in Kentucky, you don't have to have any fishing license for that. We'll go out and collect fish, and we're having the Kentucky representative from the North American Native Fishing Association come with us, so they'll be there to help identify stuff. We'll be doing it, I think they said around 2 o'clock. We usually have a cookout beforehand, so I'll get all the specific details of address and all that kind of stuff out to y'all to get on the page or in a chat or something to get more information out there, but we'd love to have y'all up. The different places we went, people bring the nets and some people bring waders, and last year we did it up in Georgetown, which is over by Lexington, and a guy had bought one of those cast nets and was trying it for the first time. Did pretty good at it for his first try. And we do see other stuff besides fish. We'll see salamanders, and they found a little bitty turtle last year, different stuff. So it's fun. We do it where it's easy access, so that, and it's shallower water in most places, so the kids can come dip around and stuff too. So
Wanted to make sure everybody knew about that. That's coming up in June, first Saturday in June. We'll have more information if you're interested. We'll make sure it's on the Facebook group, and we'll get it in the newsletter. That's the cut right there. So we'll do the drawing. Was there anything else? Okay. All right. So this is the fun part. So everybody just kind of socialize, hang out, chat with people. You can always chat with those who were speaking about what they were talking on, things like that. And we'll be calling numbers, and you can come up and pick something off the table. The one thing we do ask, because we'll call multiple people, we like to kind of get a line going, but don't cut in front of the person who's in front of you. Let them have an opportunity to look through and pick something. You can browse, just don't pick anything up until after it, okay? All right, and I'm just going to call the last 3 digits 105. Bye.